good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, we find ourselves sometimes saying, you know, when this happens, then I can do this in my life. When that takes place, then I'm really going to focus on my purpose. If I get this job, if I marry this person, if I start a family, then my life will be good and I can start doing X, Y, Z. So I'm asking you the question on today's Perspectives. Are you waiting to live your life? And by the way, what are you waiting for? I've found that many of us are waiting to live our life. We're waiting. It's almost like we're waiting by the phone. We're waiting to live our life. We're waiting it out. But what are we waiting for? What are we waiting to get to? What is the title that we're waiting to get to? The career that we want to have? What are we waiting for in the relationship department? The family, creating a family, whatever that is. Or are we waiting for a change in our life? And I find this a very interesting situation. I find that I've been in this place before where I want to change or I want something to happen, and I decide, well, if this takes place in my life, then I'll get there. If this takes place in my life, then I can get to this next trajectory. But I'm not ever looking at the fact of dealing with what I have now and creating from there. And I realized this a while back, and I caught on to the situation, and I realized that I was doing it. And I remember some of the first times in my life when I was doing it, I was younger, I was in high school, and I was wanting to, shoot photography. And I had been shooting since I was a kid, but I wanted to shoot more. And I remember saying to myself, well, if I just had the proper equipment, I had equipment, but if I had more equipment, then I could do this type of photography, right? For some of us, if I had a bigger computer, I could do more editing and I could really focus on my work. Even though I have this, I could really do more if I did that. And we start lumping everything into this future tense of if I had this, then I can create that. And I find we get really lost in that shuffle when we go there because we take away from the stuff we have now. We minimize what we have now. We devalue what we have now. And we put this value into something that hasn't taken place. We put our value into something outside of ourselves. Whether it's a person, like a romantic relationship. Well, I'll be happy and I'll really get into my life and I'll really focus on my health and I'll really focus on exercising and I'll really focus on being healthy if I had someone else in my life to make it meaningful. Think about that. How often, to some degree or another, are we doing that in our life right now? I mean, think about it. If I have a family, when I finally get a family, when I finally meet that person, I'll clean up this house, I'll get it organized, or what about, well, when I finally get a family and I meet somebody, I'll move out of here. Even though I've wanted to move out of here for 10 years, I'll do that when. I'll do that if. Not because it's me and I should do the things that I want to do based on the work that I do and how much effort I put into it. But basically, that whole back part of that thing is, am I worthy enough to do it on my own with what I have right now? And I think a lot of us fall into this trap. I've fallen into this trap. I've fallen into this trap because I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel like I was worthy enough. I didn't feel like I could make something happen. I was worried. I was in this thought process of, well, I don't have enough, and I just didn't have it, and I felt like I needed more things, more stuff, more this, more that to be a better person. And it's quite the contrary. But if we don't see it that way, it doesn't seem like it's the contrary. If we feel that to be true, then it seems like it's real. So let's start the conversation. Many of us are waiting for something like a career move. We're waiting on a career. If I get this opportunity, then I'll think about doing this and I'll create this in my life. If I finally get the option to do this, then I'll be happy. I'll finally be able to get on that trajectory of creating stuff in my life. And we get to this point of, if I have this, then I can make that happen. And I think that that's a lot of our philosophy in a lot of different things. Like, if I just make this amount of money, I'll be secure. If I just make this amount of money, I'll be happy. If I just create this, I'll be happy. If I just get to that level, I'll be happy. If I just get this degree in college, I'll be happy. But do you see how it becomes a slippery slope? Do you see how it becomes a slippery slope? Because, okay, if I just get this degree, this particular degree, I will be happy. Okay. But what happens when you look around and you see other people with a different degree? A better degree, you think? Are you going to go after that and then you'll be happy? Or are you not going to be happy now while you have what you have? It's like with the career status. When we want to have a career, we want to have something, and we're at that level, and we're really working forward to the process, and we're really looking forward to, acquiring this or doing that, and we're working so hard. And, we're seeing other people being, they're getting a better job, they're moving up in the company, things are happening for them. And, when we start thinking about, well, if I just had that in my life, or if I could just get to that point in my career, I would feel successful. If I could just get there, I would feel good about myself. And we've been there so many times, and I know that some of you right now are in this position right now. Like, it's not only doing something, like, physically doing something, but we actually put a price on these things by, I'll actually, be happy with myself. I'll actually, be feeling good about myself if this happens. So if I get into this relationship, or if I find a love relationship and someone wants to live with me, then finally, I will feel good about myself. I will feel good about myself. You see what I'm saying? So we're holding this carrot out. This carrot that says we're not good enough now, but if I do this and do that, then I'll be good enough then. And then I can really focus on my dreams and my desires and my goals in my life. It's interesting. We don't really realize it because it's not so black and white, because we kind of hide it a little bit. We hide these things. Okay? Our mind plays tricks on us because we begin to devalue ourselves because we're looking at other people and we're like, wow, must be nice. Must be nice. We look on Facebook, we look on Instagram, we look on Twitter. I mean, come on. And you start looking at these things that people are accomplishing, or their houses that they have, or the beautiful family that they have, or the pretty wife, or the handsome husband. And you sit there and you go, well, if I finally get married, you start saying that in your head, then I'll feel successful. If I'm married, I'll be successful. I'll be happy. But it's like, is that true? Because I think for the most part, it's just dangling the carrot. It's dangling the carrot of personal acceptance based on something that's conditional. So based on this condition, i.e., that I get a better job, then I will be on the trajectory of finding solid purpose. And I'll actually be able to spend more time giving back to charity if I have this job. And then that'll put me on the trajectory of doing this. And then I can actually really start to live my life. Well, I guess I have the question. I mean, what are you doing now? Are you living now? What's happening now? And that's what I want you to ask yourself. Are you in limbo right now? Are you waiting to live right now? Are you waiting to live right now? And I think a lot of us are. I think some of us are in holding patterns because we haven't gotten into this level we want. We haven't met the love of our life that we want, and so we feel like we're unlovable. We feel like we're unsuccessful because we haven't found that love of our life, or we're unsuccessful because we're not at the same career trajectory as other people are. And you begin to question your value based on that. And that can be overwhelming. It can be stressful. because we create our value based on that. And we also say, well, hey, until I get there, I can't get there. So in order for me to be happy, I have to have this to be happy. In order for me to feel at peace, this has to come into my life. In order to create XYZ, this has to happen in my life. You can begin to see that when we're not aware of these types of things, it can get our life out of control, and we can actually be on the sidelines of life waiting to live our life. Stay tuned when I return. I'll be talking more about this, more about how we're waiting to live and what we can do to change that. Later on in the hour, Copper Dallas joins me, as well as Reggie Harvey. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. I don't know how many times I've told myself, hey, if this happens in my life or this happens in my life, then I'll make this happen. But I'm going to wait till this takes place. Are you waiting to live your life? And I want to ask you, if you're waiting to live your life based on something, a career, a family, a love relationship, a home, a transfer, anything, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Because like a lot of times we put all our eggs in this basket of this thing that we think is going to happen in the future. We put our eggs in this basket and we say, okay, when this takes place, then that means that my life is really doing good. When this happens, then this means XYZ for me. But really? I mean, what about living our life right now? What about taking advantage of what we have in our life? What about focusing on making the most out of what we have instead of putting something into something that may or may not happen in the future? I mean, I'm a big believer in using what we have in our own life. And I remember when, all the way through life, growing up, I would usually think about something in the future, like I was talking about in the first segment about, if I get all this camera equipment, then I can really be a successful photographer. But it's like I already had camera equipment. I didn't have the best of camera equipment. Yeah, it was old, and yeah, sure, it was all manual, but I shot some really good stuff from that. But why was it that I was always waiting to get something better, to be better, or to do something in my life, or to create something in my life? It's very interesting. Like once I get a house, then I can paint. Even though I'm in an apartment, but I need the house because there's more room in the house. But why can't you paint in the apartment? I know it's small, but I mean, why are we avoiding doing something we love based on the amount of square footage we have? And I know for many of us, we don't even realize we're doing it. We don't even realize that we're putting all these conditions on, well, if I get this, I'll do that. If I get this, this will happen. If I get this, I'll finally be happy. If I get this, then I'm going to live my life. If I make this amount of money, then I'll really start living. But it's like, well, are we just going to keep waiting? I mean, we could be waiting forever. And I find many people are waiting for other people to make decisions. Well, if she wants to marry me, then that's great. If he wants to marry me, that's great. If they want to get a divorce, then that's great. I gotta wait for them to make the decision. Why are we waiting for other people to make decisions? Why are we waiting for them to make decisions to decide what we want to do in our life? Why are we allowing them all of that power? Why are we waiting for them to make a decision for us to live our life? That's a big question. Many of us are dealing with that right now. Whether you're having a tumultuous relationship, troubling marriage, all kinds of different things, and we're waiting for somebody to make a decision. And sometimes we're waiting for people to make decisions that don't make decisions. Sometimes you're looking for the wrong person to make a decision because it's not going to happen. Because the reason why is because you need to be making a decision. I'm not going to look to other people to make decisions for me. I've been in that position before, and you know what happened? It didn't work out well. Usually they didn't make decisions, and if they did, they weren't helpful on my behalf. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it didn't work. And it was challenging, and it was troubling, and I waited a long time, and you sit in a place of uncertainty and unmovement and no action, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And that indecisiveness and that inability to react or to act becomes almost like atrophy. And it's almost like having atrophy of emotions and atrophy of your life. I don't want to be an atrophy of my life. I want to be in movement. I want to be in contact with what I need, what I want, and what I want to see in my life. That's powerful stuff. Joining me in studio today is Copper Dallas. Copper is the owner of Body Lounge Park Cities and the clinical director who's here to give us her perspective. How are you doing, Copper?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Ashley.
I'm glad to have you in studio today.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the background, because I know that you are a health guru and that health is very important to you, and you also care much about your family. Tell me more about you.
Well, I moved here about 6 years ago, and before that, in my previous life, I was actually an event producer in Los Angeles, and I had a great career, and I didn't have children. Everything was wonderful, and I loved it, but I always had these passions outside of that. Being an event producer was what I was good at, and I did it well, fortunately for me. But I was always interested in alternative medicine, and being in Los Angeles, I had lots of resources to check things out. And one of those things I tried and did was, cupping and then dry needling. And when I was pregnant, I did all types of needling for pregnancy, as far as, carrying the baby and optimal health. And I've always just loved the idea of wellness and being proactive and preventative. And I've tried to live that way. And I've always wanted to have a clinic, but my background experience had nothing to do with that. So when I moved to Dallas, I decided to hang up my career because it didn't really exist here for what I was doing. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I wanted to be able to provide for my children in a way that I thought was great for them, but I knew I would always get back to work. But I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I started researching here, just because of who I am, different types of alternative medicine and wellness, and getting into it. And I thought, I've always wanted to do this. Why don't I just start pursuing this? Because I know a lot. I go to these courses, I research this, and I'm very passionate. Long story short, the Body Lounge was created, and obviously there's a lot in between there, but that's the basics.
I find it interesting because I've done a lot of personal education. I've really worked on a lot of things in my life, and it's interesting when you talk about from that perspective, because when somebody's gone through that, has educated themselves on the options and opportunities, you really know what works and what doesn't work. And so that's definitely a formulation for you. So when you were creating Body Lounge, you knew, hey, I've used this and I've really found some successes from that. Maybe this other stuff we won't incorporate in.
Well, everything that we offer at the Body Lounge, I do on my own. I have researched it. I have experienced it. Even with Dr. Ed, he and I, the reason why we are even partners in this is because I was looking for an alternative source for numbing and tingling in my back after countless hours and weeks and months of physical therapy, test run, MRIs, nothing. And now they're about to start testing me for, MS and other types of illnesses and diseases because there was no solution. I found him, and then within weeks, the problem wasn't the problem, and I was better. I've never had a single symptom since, and that's just one of the things. So everything that we do, including the vitamin therapy and even the cosmetics, I do on a regular basis and have done because it works. I love it. It's helpful, and it helps me to be able to enjoy my life in a healthy way.
Well, I think that's powerful. When you know something works and you actually follow through with that and you find people that actually can explain that, the idea of being able to be tested for all this stuff and not knowing, and then somebody being able to provide something that actually helps, that's pretty powerful stuff. So you don't feel the tingling anymore in your back, and you're feeling really good at this point. I
had 4 sessions with Dr. Ed, and after 4 sessions, I was done. And this is after about 2 years of this alarming condition.
So, Copper, for the folks that are listening to the show right now, where can they find out more information about Body Lounge?
Well, you can find us at our website, bodyloungeparkcities.com. And, of course, we are on Instagram, Body Lounge Park Cities, and Facebook as well. And we will be happy to answer any questions. And you can use us as a resource or call for anything you need.
Awesome, Copper. Well, I look forward to having you back in studio.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
I enjoy Copper and Dr. Ed on the show. They'll be back on next week. And if you haven't already, check out Body Lounge Park Cities. It's an amazing facility. Offers so many state-of-the-art applications and things that you can do to better your body, better your mind. That's what it's all about, is really taking care of our body and really being able to do the things we want to in our life, right? And that's what we're talking about, not waiting on the sidelines, not waiting for things to happen, but actually doing it. And when we actually do it, we want to feel good doing it too, right? So when I return, I'm going to be talking about why we wait, because I think it goes back to a self-esteem, self-value thing, because that's what it really is. But I also want to talk about where this really comes from. And, I think that's really powerful as well, is where does this desire to wait come from? And really weigh in on that. Don't miss Reggie Harvey. Reggie Harvey's going to be joining me in studio in just a few minutes, and he's going to offer his perspective on waiting to live, because he comes from such a unique perspective, and I believe that his perspective is going to shine a major light into the degree of what I'm talking about here. If you haven't already, go to my website, ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com, as well as check out my YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube and put in Ashley, Berges. You'll find new video content every single week. And you can learn about different things about relationships, relationship cycles, our toxic patterns, and the list goes on. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today I'm asking you a question. Are you waiting to live your life? And what are you waiting for? Earlier in the show I was talking about the reasons why we're waiting, the times that we're waiting on something. How we tend to wait on something to come our way, or wait for a specific career or a love interest, or to start a family, or to make a move or something. Like we want this huge thing to happen, and then and only then will we actually make changes to our life and begin to live our life. It's like we can live our life predicated on this one thing happening. And right before the break, I've been talking about some of the reasons why we do this. But right now, I would really like to hear Reggie Harvey's perspective on waiting to live your life. Reggie is the author of Anatomy of a Patient. He's also a survivor of a near-death illness. And he's also a good friend of mine and a speaker. And I think that his story is so relevant to waiting to live. Reggie, great to have you in the studio today. How you doing?
Hey, Ashley. I'm great. Actually, I'm glad we're going to get a chance to talk about this, because it lets me integrate several ideas that I had to work through. Actually, I had to fight through them. Your topic about waiting to live, when I was fighting my way through the early stages of this renal failure scenario, somehow I had it in my mind that the actual transplant of a kidney date was a milestone for a cure. But what I had to realize is there is no cure for this. Even though I may get a transplant, and even though the transplant may result in my kidney functions being returned to near normal, I still am not going to be using my original equipment. So it is a persistent chronic situation that I'm dealing with. And once I was able to get that across in my mind, that there was no cure, there was no magic date in the future, it didn't make sense for me to be trying to wait to put my life on hold until the transplant and then reboot. When I was going through this mentally, I didn't understand all that at the same time. But what was the guiding light was I realized, because of the feedback I was getting from people who knew me and people who didn't, is that even though I was viewing the world from my little perspective of being ill, I didn't realize that I was still a part of the greater universe, and that the universe was looking at me. And the universe didn't care that I was sick. The universe was interacting with the person who was present today. And so that sort of pushed me through those transitions between not just wanting to survive, but to actually get better. And then to throw away this stupid idea that I was going to use the 3 to 4 month recovery period from my transplant to plan my future. That was stupid too, because I was alive today. So once I started living as though I was actually alive in the greater universe and not worrying about the restrictions that might come from day to day with me dealing with this illness, suddenly I became available to people and started getting offers from people. Some of them knew me, some of them didn't know me. When I would tell them that I was, I had to be careful about making certain long-term commitments because I had this transplant event that was looming in the horizon, I quickly learned nobody cared. They just really didn't care. It was the only person it was a big deal to was me. They were very respectful and concerned about my welfare, but if I had something of value to offer them or some knowledge or wisdom to share with them, that's what they wanted, and they were willing to do anything, be as patient as possible in order to get it. So that sort of kick-started me into a whole new way of thinking. Is that I think I told you once before, I had a discussion with one of my medical advocates, and he said, a diagnosis is just the clinical definition of what's ailing you, but it is not the definition of how you choose to live with it. That's a completely different issue. And so this conversation we're having today ties all that together. Number one, it was stupid for me to think that I needed to wait for the transplant to start living. There were people right in my sphere of influence who needed me, who wanted me, who valued me, even more than I valued myself. And that changed the perspective on my attitude about, well, so what if a treatment didn't work out quite right? There might be another option. What if the option didn't work? Well, we'll deal with that then. I can't worry about what I don't know. And I think that's something that really gets a lot of people down or confuses people, especially when they're trying to rely on those around them for encouragement and support. And I think I mentioned this to you before. One of the odd things about my circumstances, I learned quickly, I was the one who had to make everybody around me okay. I was the one who had to be energetic when I showed up or not show up. If I don't feel like it, if I'm not it's not a good day, don't go. But if I feel great, show up. And if I project that I'm good, people won't be fumbling around me, worrying about whether they should ask me if I'm okay or if I need help or blah, 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 blah. There's a chapter in my book about a trip I made to Hawaii with my dear friend Cassandra. And what I learned from that trip, I just had to get away. I had been through so many medical procedures and tests and lab work and blood draws. And even though I was having trouble with anemia and my arthritis and gout, I decided I needed to go. And I asked her if she'd go with me. Now, Cassandra's a vivacious person. And for some reason, it just made sense. And she said, sure, she would go. Well, what I learned on that trip with her is that she didn't treat me as though I was sick. If I was having a good hour or good half day, she was right there, we're going to go. If I ran out of steam, she made sure that I had all the support that I needed, and she didn't make me feel strange about it, and nobody else at the resort felt strange about it. So I also sort of learned that lesson that just because I'm perceiving I'm sick doesn't mean the universe perceives me to be sick. All the universe cares is that I'm present. All the universe cares is that we are present today. and the influence that we have on those around us.
Wow, Reggie, that's an amazing perspective. Way to hit this subject home. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is living one's life and being in the process and not waiting to live. Hey, Reggie, if there's somebody that's listening to the show that's maybe dealing with a family member or a friend, or maybe themselves going through an illness and overcoming the situation, where can they get more information to find out more about you, but also the book that you've written that can really help people to walk them through the process?
Well, actually, the first place I direct people would be to go to my new website, which is reggieharvey.net, ReggieHarvey.net. And there you can find a little more information about me and my situation with my illness. You can also find links to where you can buy the book that'll take you back to Amazon.com. There's also a new blog section that we're building out that allows you to come back and listen to some of the previous conversations you and I have had. As well, you can just go straight to Amazon.com and look up Anatomy of a Patient, or put my name in and it'll pop up and you can get it that way.
Awesome, Reggie. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Ashley.
I felt like that was very poignant, the extent of where Reggie's coming from, because it would be very easy for him to just stop living and to put all the value and all the intention on the transplant. And do you see how we're doing that in our day-to-day life? It's not a transplant. For most of us, we're not going through that, waiting for a transplant. Some of us are. But do you see how we're waiting on things? How we're putting stuff off based on the fact that if I get this, then I'll be good. If I get this, then I can make this happen. If I get that, I'll be happy finally. And that's what I really want to talk about. That's what I want us to focus on. Why does that happen? Where does this come from? What is it about? And at one point in time, I thought it was all about procrastination. But it's not. It's not. It has nothing to do with procrastination. What it has to do with the fact is that we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that we're good enough. We don't believe that we're good enough to do something. We believe that we need all this other stuff to be good enough when we don't need it at all. We've confused ourselves with what we need. We've confused ourselves with our direction. Do you see what I'm saying? We've confused ourselves. We're confusing ourselves by our value and not our value. We're thinking that these things outside of ourselves gives us value when it doesn't. When I return, I'll be talking more about what that means and how you can turn this around in your day-to-day life when I return. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. I've been asking the question, are you waiting to live your life? If you're waiting on the sidelines, what are you waiting for? What's going on? Why are you waiting? I mean, we wait around, and I know why we wait around. We wait around to make the big decisions or to begin to live, like Reggie was talking about. Like he was going to literally wait to live until he got the transplant. But what about the transplant? What if it happens? What if it doesn't? What if it takes years to get? Well, I mean, think about all that stuff. And many of us are not in the situation of waiting on a transplant. We're waiting on a job to happen, or we're waiting on somebody to fall in love with us, or we're waiting to get a divorce, or we're waiting to get married, or we're waiting to get that house, or we're waiting to get that job transfer. We're waiting. We're constantly waiting. Well, when is it ever going to be the right time? And I used to think it was procrastination, but it's not. It's not at all procrastination. It's not believing that you're good enough. It's not believing that you're good enough. It's not believing that you can actually achieve this. Achieving something. That's what it's about. We're so scared we're not going to make it. We're so scared it's not going to happen for us. We're so scared at the core that we can't do it without XYZ. I just had an amazing thing happen. I won a Telly Award. I won a Telly Award for my TV show, The Celebrity Perspective. And you can find the Celebrity Perspective on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Biz TV. You can find it on C-Suite TV. But if think about it. I didn't think I could do it. I was scared. And I remember there was times when I didn't think I could do it. I was looking outside of myself. And when I finally realized it's not outside of myself, I can do this. I made it happen. Great things happen in our lives. We just got to believe it. We got to believe that we can do it. We got to start living our life. Even if we don't really know, even if we're just forging in the dark, it's better to forge in the dark instead of just sitting there, waiting. I'd rather forge around looking for the light than wait for someone else to turn the light on for me or to never turn the light on for me. What if nobody ever turns the light on for you and you're just waiting around? I don't want to do that. And the reason why we do it is not because of procrastination. It's because we don't believe we're good enough. We don't see our personal value. We don't recognize our value. We don't recognize who we are. We've missed the boat. And why is that? Is because we were sold a bill of goods, or we believed in a bill of goods when we were younger that said that we weren't good enough. We looked outside of ourselves for answers. We looked outside of ourselves for acceptance. We looked outside of ourselves. We wanted other people to love us, and we begged other people to love us. And sometimes we got hurt, and it didn't happen, and they didn't love us the way we wanted to. It was all conditional and based on whatever they wanted, and if you jumped through their hoops, then it was okay. Do you see what I'm saying? It's been a lifetime of conditioning to make you believe that. It's a lifetime of conditioning to make you believe that you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough unless you have this thing happen for you. But what happens when that thing happens? Is it ever going to be good enough? Are you going to wait for something else to happen? Are you going to wait for something else to happen? What about this? What about that? Constantly looking outside of self. If I don't have that, then I'm not worthy. If I don't have that, then I'm not good enough. If I don't have that, if I don't have that, if I don't have that, it's like a broken record. It's like a broken record. I don't want to live like a broken record. I've done countless shows on the negative broken record. And this goes hand in hand with that. Those negative thoughts, those things holding us back in life, telling us we're not good enough, we can't do something, we need somebody or something outside of ourselves to help facilitate this. It's just not true. It's just not true. But you got to believe it, and you got to know it, and you got to be able to see yourself. You got to be able to recognize when you're living this way. You got to be able to recognize when you are not realizing your value. You've got to be able to understand when you're not realizing your value. You've got to be able to see it. You got to know it. And a lot of times it creeps up because we feel like, because it comes in the package of, well, we need this to do that. We need this. It's like with my show, with the TV show. Well, at first you sit there and you come up with all these things. Well, we need a huge crew, or we need this, or we need that. And I had a crew, but, it wasn't huge, or we need this, or we need that. And you can need things and think yourself right out of everything. You can think yourself out of everything. You can tell yourself that if you just get this, it'll be good. But what happens if you don't get this? But when you finally get that, you're going to need something else. Right? When you finally get that, you think you need something else. That's not what we want to do. That's not how we want to live our life. I don't want to live my life like that. And I lived my life before like that. I would live my life waiting to make a move, waiting to do something. I would wait. I don't want to do that anymore. And that's why I'm really cognitive and mindful of the fact of when I go into those situations, when I begin to feel that way, when I begin to question, when I begin to base my value on something outside of myself. I really am being more mindful of when that's happening. I'm recognizing when I'm doing that. I'm aware of when I'm doing that now. And you know what? I know that you know this, but we don't live forever in this lifetime. So we got to do something. We got to do something. I remember Shawshank Redemption when he said you got to get busy living, or you got to get busy dying. You got to get busy living, you're going to get busy dying. Remember that in Shawshank Redemption? That was a good film. And it reminds me every day, we either got to get busy doing what we want to do. Do it. Make it happen. Don't think about it. Don't say, hey, I'll do this when this happens, but actually do something. You'll be quite proud of yourself. Even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to work out, you won't have that regret. You won't have that regret that hurts so bad. The regret is what hurts. It's what stings. The resentment of not doing what you want. The resentment of waiting for other people. Waiting for other people to make decisions for you. Or waiting for something to happen to make that decision or to do that. Be aware of this. Where in your life are you doing this right now? Where in your life are you doing this right now? Because there's somewhere that you probably are. And the only way we can change that is for you to be aware of it. The only way for you to stop that is for you to be mindful enough to understand that this is taking place and for you to begin to curtail this and to be aware of it and to stop it. You might see this in other people. You probably see this in relatives and friends that they don't follow through with things. They don't do it. Is it based in fear? It's probably based in fear. They're scared. They don't think they can do it. They're overwhelmed. We can see the problems in other people a lot easier than we do to ourselves. So let's look within ourselves and ask ourselves, is there a place in my life that I'm doing this right now? And why is it that I feel that I'm not worthy? And how can I really work on my own self-esteem and self-worth to be able to jump that hurdle? I hope the content of today's show has helped you. Share it with your friends and family and anybody that you think might use this information wisely. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.